drop a gear and disappear, but in a 90s car. So what I'm going to go over today is the E34 and why it's such a good platform. Because a lot of people really don't know about these kind of cars. They're kind of like a hidden gem because they're still pretty affordable, but they offer you a lot. And, you know, it kind of looks older, but it gives you that retro look. And I'm, of course, doing this at the wrong time of the day, so it's very sunny. But it is a very retro car. It gives you the retro vibes, but with a modern twist to it. So the nice part is you got, for most of, I think all the E34s have fuel injection and coils. This actually, my M30 didn't. I take that back. That had distributor, but for the most part, it's pretty a pretty modern platform. And for example, this 540 has a V8 with it, dual overhead cams. It is really good in performance, actually shockingly good. The other day I raced my friend in an E46 M3, and let's just say that it was pretty much neck and neck, except for the top one. He got me on the top, but that's pretty impressive for a car that's coming on, a chassis that's coming on 30 years, right? Or it is actually 31 years now, because I think they launched this in 89 in the US. So technically it's been, I guess, 39 years on this chassis, since this chassis was first unveiled. So it's a pretty old design. And this one's a 95, so I think it's, what is it now, 20-something years old, 25, something like that, years old. It doesn't matter. Anyway, this car outperforms a lot of more modern cars. And I'm actually shocked because, you know, I've had many E34s. My first E34 was a 525. Then I had a 535. And then I had a 540 briefly, but it was not a running one, so I sold it broken. And then I had another 535. So I've had several E34s, and actually the chassis itself is pretty brilliant. It blocks out a lot of outside sound, but not too much, so you still feel kind of engaged, but you also feel luxury. And the 535 I had done the full suspension, and the previous owner did some of it as well, but that thing had Coney suspension and all. I think they had moose head control arm bushings, right? And that thing handled superb. Like, I've owned E46 M3s, I've owned E36s. It felt really a lot like an E36 M3. It felt very nimble. It had an LSD. This one, of course, doesn't have an LSD because, unfortunately, it's a large case and those are more expensive to get. But, you know, what you do get is a V8 with close to 300 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque. And it makes good power to the ground. I don't know. And the way it produces the power, it's very linear. There's like power all over the RPM range. And I'll give you an example. Here, I'm in second gear now, some speed 30 miles an hour, and I'll just... and it sounds amazing. I mean, listen to the V8. This is with stock exhaust, so it's not really exhaust noise. That's pure engine noise. And it's fantastic. What else can you get for, what is this? I paid $6,000 for it. Of course, mine needed work, but now the car market came down, and you can get a pretty decent running one for $6,000 now. So, I mean, what else can you buy? What are you going to get, a Toyota? This thing runs way better than a Toyota. You know, E36 M3s and E46 M3s are crazy prices now. Like, a clean E36 M3 can get up to like 20-something, right? From mid-teens to 20-something. E46 M3, good luck, it's like 30 plus, right? 540, you can get a pretty clean one for like, if you want the nicest example, it's like $10,000. It's not a lot at all. And the amount of car you get, I mean, I'll say the performance is on par with a E46 M3. Unbiasedly, yeah. You know, the E46 M3 will be faster a little bit. It will handle better, of course. It's a smaller car. But this has 4 doors, and this thing is way more comfortable than the E46 M3. The other really cool thing about this car, the E34 platform in general, it's one of the cheapest cars to own as far as like parts, right? So I was able to get the whole front suspension with pretty good name brands for like $300, but aside from the shocks and springs. But like all the control arms refreshed, everything, pretty much all of everything up front except for the shocks have been replaced. And why? Because the parts were so cheap. I mean, if you did that on a more modern car, like even an E46 M3, you're talking about, wait, let's see this. See, it just never gets old. I mean, it's so fast. That's amazing. Like, it's really amazing for the age of the car. And I have an M2, so it's not like I don't know what speed is. My M2 is way faster than this, sure. But my M2 wasn't produced close to 30 years ago. It was produced like last year. So yeah, I mean, they have a lot of opportunity to be restored. So if you want to go restore a car, the E34 really makes sense because, okay, I did all the front engine seals, everything like that. It's a few $100 for all the parts, the seals, all the plastic parts. For some reason, the parts on this car are super cheap, and I really think it's because this car used to be shipped out internationally, and a lot of third world countries have this car. So, including the country I'm from, Lebanon. That's the main reason I fell in love with this chassis. Was actually when I went back home, they actually had a lot of E34s, and I rode in one, and I was like, man, I need to get one of these. This reminds me of, Lebanon. So I came back and I bought my first one, which is the green one that's in that Z4 video I did many years ago. The parts are so cheap on it. You can restore every part of the car. The most expensive parts, I'll say, is going to be like shocks, if you get like a name brand. If you don't go like some cheapy one. If you want to do Bilstein, it's pretty standardized pricing, right? It's not like the OEM replicas, which are like some Eastern European brands. But I guess if you want to do that, I'm sure those are decent enough. But I want to do a better handling, so I'm going to do the Bilstein set and the H&R springs, and that will give me the handling without compromising the ride quality too much. The one parts that were really hard to find, specifically for the 540, was the clutch. That was obnoxiously annoying, because you cannot find OEM clutches for this car, so you're stuck getting aftermarket because they just stopped making OEM clutches. It had some bigger, unique clutch. You can try an E39 E39 general V8 clutch, that or the M5 one, but those have self-adjusting clutches and go out really fast, and they drive like poop. So then I went to aftermarket. I was like, okay, let's find another brand name. So I found UUC. Not a big fan of that company, by the way, because they kind of did me wrong there. But the clutch is decent. It's kind of a grabby clutch, so like it's an on and off switch at the end, which is kind of annoying. And I did get their flywheel, their lightweight flywheel, which I think their flywheel is great. It doesn't chatter that much. It chatters a little bit, but it drives really nice. I mean, it revs up the RPMs like crazy. It's fun to drive. It makes the engine feel kind of like I would compare it to like an S54 as far as like raw feeling after I did the flywheel. So it kind of gives you that like race car-ish engine vibe, even though it's just a big lumbering V8, which this car in general doesn't have that big of a lumbering V8 feel to it. It has more of a high-strung V8. I would compare it to like an E92 M3 with a lot less power. So you get that kind of high-strung V8 vibe, and I think that's from the dual overhead cam versus like something like a LS or something like that, where it just produces a shit ton of power down low, and it's old school, and it sounds like kind of, I don't know, if you're an American muscle guy, you'll like it. I don't like the sound of those kind of engines, those American muscle engines. This gives you a more European, more exotic feel and sound to it. If you've ever heard one of these with a straight pipe, they actually sound significantly different than something like a LS or a Ford motor, right? Until they came out with those flat plane crank V8s. Those are pretty good, and they sound pretty good too. Now, the styling of this car, I found it's kind of controversial because everybody has their own liking of styling. But I actually quite like the style of the E34. I think the front is kind of OEM BMW, kind of like the original, gives you the E30 vibes in the front, just wider and a little bit more, I would say, grown up. I mean, I love the way the E30 looks, but this gives you a more like adult feel to it. Kind of like, mine is gold, so it looks like a grandpa car, but like other ones look pretty aggressive that are like black or red or something like that. like adult feel to it. And the back end is really interesting because in the 90s, to have a back end that's kind of flat was kind of very unique. Like if you look at the Lexus LS, for example, same time frame this car came out, it had that big bumper in the back that just kind of stuck out. That was very common in the 90s. And this car really didn't have it, which was really nice. The bumper kind of ends towards where the trunk kind of ends. So it does stick out a little bit, but not like in a Lexus LS where it like hangs back. And Mercedes, I think, did that too. They did that where it hangs back a little bit more. But I like it. And you know, if you compare it to other luxury sedans in its period, nobody was doing sporty luxury sedans, right? Except BMW. You don't see anybody running around in a... I know the S-Class is more comparable to like a 7 Series of the era, but this is like an E-Class, I would say. An E-Class back then, oh my god. In the 90s, that's like a road boat, right? Which I don't even know what the E-Class looked like back in the 90s. It might have just been the S-Class. Mercedes guys, don't hate me for this. I'm not sure back in the 90s what they had. Anyway, but they didn't have anything like sporty sedan mixed together. The BMW is the only ones who used to do sporty sedan. You didn't see Lexus a lot, of course. You didn't see what is another brand? I think that's it. There's Mercedes. Oh, Audi. They're very boaty at the time. They did a little bit more sporty than Mercedes for that time period, but still, I mean, they had the Quattro. What did they have back then? I don't know, something Audi has. I know a little bit about Mercedes, and I know nothing about Audi because I don't like them. Don't hate me, Audi fanboys, but I just don't like them. But watch this. Drop a gear. A second, and just literally drop a gear and disappear. But in a 90s car. And it's wild. I mean, I have to slow down because I'm going so quick. Like a few seconds of flooring it, and you're at big speeds, which you don't expect from a car from 1995, and especially not like an M. This is not the M5. This is the 540, which is about, I would argue, about the same performance as an M5. But you know, the M5 at the end of the day is an M5, so it's kind of cool when it had the race motor. But this thing is not bad either. It's no stout. I mean, it's pretty stout. Pretty stout. It's no slouch. It's the best word to say. All right. Here's an S4 I'm passing. Yeah, even the new S4 doesn't look as cool as this. I mean, here's the really interesting thing about this car. It has a ton of personality. You don't get that with new cars. You really don't. There's very few new cars that make you feel a certain way, that make you, that give you the headache that these cars do. They all just do their job, and they do it really well, and they accelerate very quickly and very, I would say, boringly. And I have an M2, and the M2 is great and all, but this thing actually excites me more than the M2. Let's get a nice clip of me giving it the guns. So, what would I recommend to buy as an E34? I recommend you buy any E34 because they're all fantastic in different ways. So, like, they have the 525, which is a nice 2.5 cylinder modern engine. That's probably the most modern engine out of all of these engines, just because it's the standard BMW modern 6-cylinder. Specifically, if you get like a 94 and 95, you get pretty much the M50, and they actually use that in the later 3 Series. They just bumped up the displacement a little bit. So that's a great motor. It's very slow. I had a 95, which is the final year with the Vanos and all that stuff. Incredibly slow, but it had a lot of character, so you'll have fun getting to the speed limit. It's like a whole, every time you start from 0 to get to the speed limit is like a whole adventure. It takes you probably 7 seconds, but it's a fun 7 seconds. Now, the next one that I actually recommend a lot is very underrated. It's the 535. And the 535 is actually surprisingly fast. It is the old school, very old motor M30. It's one of BMW's more early motor designs. So it's a very simple motor. There's no Vanos, no... I think I want to say it's a single cam. It might be, don't hate me for this, but it might be a dual overhead cam. One or the other. But anyways, it's a very simple motor. You can build it and rebuild it, and my red one had 500,000 miles on it, literally 500,000 miles, which is crazy. So those things last forever. They're bulletproof, and they're surprisingly quick. Surprisingly quick. I mean, they're not a fast car. This is much faster, being the 540, much faster. But that 535, it had a lot of character. It felt very kind of like I would expect. I drove an M5 once of this generation, and it felt like the 535, but on steroids. This gives you a different feel. So a 540, I don't recommend the 530. It's just you'll always be wanting the 540, and you'll always think, shoot, I should have bought the 540. But unfortunately, yeah, they just made that. I don't even know why they made the 530. It's such a bizarre car, because the 530 is the same car as the 540 with one less liter of displacement, and it's just a slower 540. So you get the V8 feel, but it's just like with less power, and it didn't come in a 6-speed. It only came in a 5-speed if you get the manual and the auto, of course, which I recommend you not to buy any of the autos, okay? Because the autos are just old slush boxes, and you might run into issues with them. And it's just the time period. I mean, they weren't bad for the period, but if you want to run into an issue, the auto is the #1 way to do that, because you don't know how long they're going to last at this point. Some of them they go strong, but you know, I wouldn't mess with one. I wouldn't pick one up. You might be going one day and then you realize, oh shoot, the automatic transmission clutch is slipping, and that's really annoying. One of the clutches, and I recommend against that. So if you want to get an auto, okay, but like I don't suggest that, right? So I also suggest you to get kind of work your way up, see what you like out of the car. I would say a 535 and a 540 or an M5. These are the 3 places you want to end up. I think a 525, you're gonna love it. It's your like gateway drug into E34s. You're just gonna be wanting more all the time. It's just not gonna give you the oomph you want. If you want it for a daily, get a 525. Gas mileage is great. They drive really nice, just like any other E34. The engine does have some personality to it. It's just not enough oomph. If you want to turbo it, the 525 is the way to go. People make crazy power on those little motors when they add a turbo. If you're going to keep it NA, I recommend against it. The places where you want to end is the 540. The 540, the M5, those are like the 2 different paths to the same result. Like you want the end goal, you want a 540 or you want a M5. They're about like the best versions of this car you can go. Now they're both just different. Like they're equal but different. So like the M5 gives you the racy race car feel out of a 5 Series, which is amazing. Like you don't get that back in the 90s. You don't get that anywhere. Like you don't get it. That's literally the motors derived from the M1 race car, right? So I don't think you can get that from anything else. What other, BMW doesn't make any more race engines. So the closest thing that comes to it is the S54, in my opinion, which is pretty much the same motor. Actually, the M5 made a little bit more power than the S54. It's just a bigger block, so it had more torque and more power. But anyways, both are really good. The 540 though gives you more of a V80 feel. I don't know how to explain it, put it into words, but if you think about it, it gives you more of the E39 M5 feel than an E34 M5. It's closer to the E39 M5 than it is to, yeah, I would say it's closer to the E39 M5 than it is to the M5 of this generation. And it's basically because it's an engine that's more or less derived out of the M60. That's what the M5 has. It went to M60, M62, which is the upgraded version of this motor, and then they upgraded the M62 and they made the S62. So progression. So I would say it's probably closer to that, and the feel too. I mean, you're driving a V8. It's a little bit more heavy. Actually, I take that back. Those big 6 cylinders back in the day were pretty heavy, but about the same weight. But you know, it's a V8 versus a 6-cylinder. All right, guys. I actually had to cut an end to the video a little bit early, but that was pretty much the end of the video anyways. I just wanted to wrap it up. So yeah, E34s are awesome. They are, you know, a hidden gem. If you can find one for a good price, I would hop on it. They're still pretty cheap. I think they're gonna go up in value eventually. They're kind of like the underdog of cars right now. So if you enjoyed that video, like and subscribe, and I'll be coming out with more content. And if you guys enjoy this more long-winded conversation type of content, let me know. If you guys think I should go back to a quicker form of content, maybe not go into depth as much, let me know that as well.